3 different decades this man was calling games for the Red Sox. He's now been on ESPN forever and a day and is the new voice of Monday Night Football. So definitely wanted to get him on the show to personally congratulate Sean McDonough. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing great, Rich. How are you doing?
Man, congratulations. What does this
Thank you.
What does this mean to you?
Oh, it means the world. You know, I knew one of those lucky people who knew when I was probably 4 or 5 years old what I wanted to do, and this was what I wanted to do. And, you know, it's a dream come true. Who in our business wouldn't want to have the chance to do Monday Night Football? And, you know, it still hasn't sunk in, but it better eventually because it's going to be starting before I even know it.
Well, your dad is iconic in the business and certainly involved in the football business. What do you think your dad would think hearing this news, Sean?
Well, I hope he's proud and happy up there in heaven. You know, the other day we did the conference call with the media writers from around the country, and when the topic got to my dad, I got really emotional. I think there was about a 10-second pause as I was talking, and I'm getting a little bit better at it now, but it's still really emotional. I mean, the best memories of my childhood, and I'm not just saying this, my brothers and sisters would agree with it, were, you know, really little, you go to bed early, but on Monday nights, my dad would let us stay up till halftime of the Monday Night Football game, which obviously in the East Coast was around 10:30 at night, and we'd have ice cream and Cheez-Its. My dad loved Cheez-Its, and then you know, we'd watch Howard Cosell do halftime highlights, and we'd go to bed. So you know, my dad had a long affiliation with the NFL, as you know, Rich. I really believe he's one of the most important media people in the history of the league, as really the first information man who transitioned from newspapers into television. And when he died, Peter King came to the funeral and told me the first person he called when he got into television was my dad, and thanked him for paving the way for all these other guys who are now getting a great opportunity and making a nice living as information men on sports television.
And now you're calling Monday Night Football games starting this fall on ESPN. And I remember my brother and I watching the halftime segment. We would be so upset when Cosell didn't show a highlight of the Jets. We thought it was just an ultimate level of disrespect that he wouldn't talk about our team, you know. And I remember that, Sean. That was so important to me and my brother and family.
Well, one of the other great memories of my youth was when I was a senior in high school. I took a trip with my dad through the Midwest to look at colleges and went to some games with him. Went to a game at Notre Dame, went to a Chicago Bears game the next day in Chicago, and then we drove up to Green Bay because the Patriots, who my dad was covering for the Boston Globe, were playing Monday Night Football against the Packers. And Howard Cosell walked into the hotel lobby. My dad had just been in a rather famous or infamous scuffle with Raymond Claiborne, who played on the Patriots, and actually knocked him down in the Patriots locker room a couple times. And Howard Cosell came walking over and said, "Larry Holmes wants you. He knows you're the toughest guy around." And anyway, Howard invited me to stand in the back of the booth the next night and watch Monday Night Football, and that was a memory that I'll have with me forever.
Do you remember which game in specific?
It was Green Bay at New England at Green Bay. It would have been in the fall of 1979.
So would that
probably
be
September of '79?
Would that be Grogan?
I think Steve Grogan would have been the quarterback then.
Would you guys
my dad about 3 weeks before had a very, it kind of made him into a media folk hero. Ray Claiborne wasn't all that happy in the locker room after a Patriots win over your Jets. As a matter of fact, they beat them 56-3.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, my brother and sister and I used to stand out in the parking lot and wait for my dad as he'd go down and get the quotes and the information that he needed to write his story, and was taking longer than usual. And a security guard came up and said, "Are you the McDonough kids? You better come with me." So we had never been inside the building before, and it turns out my dad had been in a little tiff with Claiborne. But, yeah, and knocked him down twice. If I remember correctly, the late, great Dick Young wrote that my dad should win the Pulitzer Prize for journalism because it was a great moment for sports media, that they kind of turned the tables in the relationship between athlete and media member.
Well, I mean, and I'm with Sean McDonough here on the Rich Eisen Show, and I'm glad that we're having this part of the conversation because you know, obviously you're new to Monday Night Football for those who have been tuning in for years, and fellow Syracuse guy Mike Tirico having done it for 10 years. But you have DNA in this stuff, Sean. I mean, you have a connection, a personal connection with something.
Oh, yeah,
like
I really grew up around the NFL. I mean, as long as I was alive, before I was alive, my dad was covering, you know, my dad covered the Patriots from the very beginning in 1960, and, you know, a lot of his closest friends were people that he met in the NFL, Bill Parcells, Al Davis, Matter of fact, they were two of the most emotional people that I talked to after my dad died. They were among his closest friends. So it was really cool. My dad used to, when he knew somebody famous was going to call the house, he would tell me to run and answer the phone and then politely ask who was calling it, because he knew it was going to be Johnny Unitas or Pete Rozelle or whoever it was going to be. So it was always one of the treats of growing up in the house was to answer the phone and wonder who it was going to be that you were talking to on the other end.
Sean McDonough joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So part of the reason also I wanted to have you on, Sean, is a therapy moment for me, okay? Because I think you probably know where this is going, but as you know, I'm a Michigan man.
Yes.
And very rarely do I actually like the person who's calling one of the worst sports moments of my life.
Don't kill the messenger. That's all I can say.
But
Don't kill the messenger.
But here was your call for those who may not have heard it. The whole country did, but of your call of the botched punt against Michigan State this year. Here we go.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State's Jalen Watts Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game. Unbelievable.
So that was a call. Sean,
yeah.
great call.
I'm very proud to say that I have reached puberty since then.
No. Look, no. But you are meeting the moment. Okay, you're meeting the moment, and
it was unbelievable. And I think that's really the key to calling any live moment is don't think about it. Just go with what your natural reaction would be. And I'm sure mine was probably reflective of what most people who were watching the game or in the stadium that day were thinking about. It was just unbelievable. We had gone all the way to the edge of talking about what this win would mean for Michigan and Jim Harbaugh as he was starting out his tenure without quite going there, because you always have to allow. There's nothing worse than saying the game's over when it's a one-score game and then something like that happens. But obviously the percentage chance of something like that happening was incredibly slim.
Right. And so you're basically calling my nightmare at that moment in time. I'm sitting there.
And you know what? You're always cognizant of that. People sometimes mistake the excitement in your voice for, you're rooting for one team or the other. And, if it had gone the other way, I would have been just as excited. Probably even more so, because when you're yelling over something good that's happening for the home team, you're usually yelling over even more crowd noise. And, so that's really what that was all about. But, as someone who loves Syracuse and has lived and died with Syracuse and been on both ends of stuff like that, I certainly understand the anguish when it happens to your team.
But this is being therapeutic for me, if you don't mind, Sean, just indulging me, because after that call, you had 30. You want to guess how many seconds of silence you had? Because you did the right thing as a professional broadcaster of your stature to let the moment.
I don't know. I would say between 30 and a minute.
39 seconds. Okay, so here I am watching this whole thing play out. I looked like the kid who became a meme on Twitter with his hands on his head. I really did. I wasn't wearing a maize sweatshirt. It was a my blue Michigan shirt. And then the silence is broken with this.
Michigan State is still the big boy on the block in the state of Michigan.
Now that right there was the dagger.
Yeah, that might have rubbed it a little. That's probably a little unnecessary. But we had talked about, as you know, the whole dynamic of that rivalry for so many years, and the whole little brother thing with Mike Hart and the way Mark D'Antonio responded to that. And, you know what that relationship is like in that state.
Yes.
And Jim Harbaugh even acknowledged in the days leading up to that game, right now Michigan State has had the upper hand based on recent performance. So that's why we put that period on it. But, yeah, I could imagine that wouldn't feel really good.
Well, as a matter of fact, play the whole thing in context here, just for your defense. Go for it.
Michigan State is still the big boy on the block in the state of Michigan. A shocking ending to this rivalry game. And just when it looked like Michigan had made a number of statements regarding what's going on in the state, the Big Ten race, its position nationally, this happens.
Exactly. So, but just that last part I didn't hear until just like today.
Right.
Sean.
No, I mean, that was it. I mean, we were
you nailed
really,
it.
Talking about how they were about to be the feel-good story of the year in college football with Jim Harbaugh working his magic. And, and at the end of the year, I think it was still an excellent year for them. But,
no doubt. But has there anything come close to a moment like that? for you in your career?
An ending like that?
Yeah, anything. Baseball,
we
football,
were lucky,
anything. Anything.
Some seasons, it seems to go season by season. Every week is a dog, and then other years, everything's a great game. Our season started last year. Our very first game was Mike Riley's first game at Nebraska. And I don't know if you remember this, but you talk about tough ways to start. They lost on a Hail Mary on the last play of the game against BYU. And, it doesn't quite compare to the Michigan State thing. I would be hard-pressed to find anything else I can remember that does, given everything that went into it. But that was certainly jarring, too, for the Nebraska people.
I'm sure it was. And Sean, congratulations on the gig. I look forward to hearing your call with Gruden all throughout the fall. And
it's going to be fun. He's awesome.
Just wanted to have you on to congratulate you. And also, I feel better. It's a therapeutic moment to work this out with the man who called my night. And anytime I have a nightmare, if you don't mind, I'll call you in the middle of the night so you can provide the play-by-play of it. Real
Feel free, anytime. Bill Rafter usually calls me about 2 in the morning anyway, so I'm kind of used to it.
Awesome, Sean. Congrats again.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Of course. Thanks for joining. That's Sean McDonough here on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.